Welcome everyone to Discover This. Today we're going to talk about the life of John Cale. Maybe you know him better as J.J. Cale, prolific songwriter and performer. And we're going to talk about some of the music he made, some of the songs he wrote, and just his life in general. So check it out.
1, 2, 3, 4.
John Weldon Cale was born on December 5th, 1938 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and while learning to play guitar, he also studied sound engineering and even built his own recording studio in his parents' house. After graduating high school, he went into the Air Force and got technical training there and learned a lot about electronics. In 1964, he moved to Los Angeles and found a job as a studio engineer, and also started playing in bars and clubs around town. He ended up getting a regular gig at the Whiskey A Go-Go, usually subbing for Johnny Rivers, who played there quite often. Elmer Valentine supposedly started calling John Cale JJ to avoid any confusion with John Cale from the Velvet Underground. J.J. Cale would cut demos of songs he was writing, and some other artists would record his songs. But J.J. Cale found very little success as a recording artist and was making very little money as a studio engineer, so he sold his guitars and moved back to Tulsa in 1967. In 1970, he found out that a guy named Eric Clapton had recorded his song After Midnight, and it was on Clapton's debut album. That song became a radio hit. J.J. Cale was told to put out his own record and try and use some of the hype from the Eric Clapton recording to help out his own career. So J.J. Cale started recording albums and playing live. He would open for some folks or headline some shows. In 1974, a band called Lynyrd Skynyrd recorded the J.J. Cale song called Call Me the Breeze, which proved to be a big hit. The money from Call Me the Breeze and After Midnight allowed J.J. Cale to record and tour on his own terms, basically when he felt like it. In 1976, J.J. Cale put out an album called Troubadour, and on that album was his song Cocaine. Eric Clapton released his version of J.J. Cale's song Cocaine a year later in 1977, and it became another huge hit. In 1979, Cale met his future wife, Christine Lakeland, also a singer-guitarist, at a benefit show at a prison where Cale was on the bill with B.B. King and Waylon Jennings. In the 1980s, Cale moved back to California and basically became a recluse. He was still writing lots of songs and doing the occasional record album, sometimes recording those albums in Nashville and sometimes in L.A. In 1989, J.J. Cale bought a ranch in Valley Center, California, in northern San Diego County. That became his home for the rest of his life. Between 1996 and 2003, J.J. Cale released no new music, but he still wrote songs, lots of songs. A lot of artists recorded J.J. Cale songs: Bobby Blue Bland, Poco, Brian Ferry, Herbie Mann, Santana, Iron and Wine, Beck, Waylon Jennings, The Band, the Allman Brothers, Johnny Cash, and many others. In his 2003 autobiography, Neil Young said, quote, "Of all the players I've ever heard, it's got to be Hendrix and J.J. Cale who are the best electric guitar players," unquote. And then there's this quote from Eric Clapton. In 2004, J.J. Cale appeared at Eric Clapton's Crossroads Festival in Dallas, Texas. And after that show, Clapton asked J.J. Cale to produce an album for him. Well, Eric Clapton came out to J.J. Cale's ranch in Valley Center, California in August of 2005 to start prep work for that album. They wrote some songs, or J.J. Cale wrote most of the songs, and they just formatted them and got them where where they wanted him to be. And then they ended up recording that album together in Los Angeles and co-producing it together. 11 of the 14 songs on that album were written by J.J. Cale. Eric Clapton had spent a week in Valley Center living at J.J. Cale's house and working out these songs. And there was a who's who of other musicians on that album. Derek Trucks, John Mayall, Steve Jordan, Nathan East, Doyle Bramhall, Albert Lee, Taj Mahal. And that album was also the final recording of keyboardist Billy Preston. The 2006 album was called Road to Escondido, which is actually Valley Center Road near J.J. Cale's house. And that's the road they would take most mornings when Eric Clapton was at J.J. Cale's house, and they would drive down to Escondido and have breakfast, and then drive back up the hill to J.J. Cale's house on Valley Center Road. Now, interestingly, the album cover photo was not taken in Valley Center, anywhere near Valley Center Road, or Escondido for that matter, but it was taken at the Paramount Movie Ranch outside of LA while they were recording the album. Eric Clapton wanted J.J. Cale to do the whole 2007 tour for this album. However, J.J. Cale said no. So Clapton came back with just the West Coast dates, and again, J.J. Cale said no. But they agreed on J.J. Cale joining Eric Clapton for the San Diego show for 5 songs. So on March 15, 2007, J.J. Cale and his wife pulled into the parking lot here at the San Diego Sports Arena, and J.J. Cale joined Eric Clapton and his band for 5 songs on stage here. That show was recorded and released as Eric Clapton Live in San Diego. In March of 2009, J.J. Cale decided to play a few shows in California, just because he could. And he played 2 shows in Los Angeles, one of which Tom Petty showed up and played a couple songs. He played one night here in Solana Beach, California at the Belly Up Tavern, and one night at the Coach House in San Juan Capistrano, California. The Belly Up show here was basically a hometown show. It was sold out and the crowd loved every minute of J.J. Cale. And J.J. Cale is laid to rest here in the Mission San Luis Reyes Cemetery in Oceanside, California. And he's laid to rest right here next to this huge bougainvillea tree or bush. Right here, John Weldon J.J. Cale. Born December 5th, 1938, and passed away July 26, 2013. Rest in peace, J.J. Cale, and thank you for all the great music. So that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for this video on the life of J.J. Cale. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you taking the time. I encourage you to check out some of JJ's own music, some of his own albums, or stream some of his songs that as he performed them. And there's still people recording his music today. In 2021, Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs recorded Humdinger, a J.J. Cale song, and put that out, so you can check that out also. But again, thank you for watching, and please check out some of our other videos, and we will see you next time.